The Lord is risen. The Lord is risen indeed. As a child, Easter was one of, if not the best Sunday of the year. It's at least the one that I remember the most. For one, Easter mornings were always filled with excitement. We all wore our nicest clothes. For me, that meant I got to wear a necktie. I got to wear a necktie, which at the time I felt pretty cool about doing since Dad always wore a tie and I never had the opportunity. Now, these clothes weren't always the most comfortable, but it did say to me that this was a very special day. And you can feel that it was different at church too. Everyone was exceptionally joyous. Bright smiles, big gestures, and they were all wearing their Sunday best too. Teachers who normally wore jeans came in dresses and skirts and ties and slacks. Everyone looked very grown up. You'd hardly find a church member grumbling or even making side comments. It was one of those days when everyone abided by the old saying, if you've got nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. Worship was different too, because usually we would have joint services, and normally joint services meant that we sat next to our parents, but this Sunday was different. The Sunday school had presentations, so all of us would sit together in the front rows, and there would be a time in the middle of service when we would go up and present. It was usually a song and some body worship that we had practiced for several weeks during Lent. There was one Easter that I recall when I had to recite Psalm 23 from memory. The trouble was I had to memorize both the Korean and English versions. The pressure was really on. Easter was also an all-church picture day for us. We would bring out the chairs to the lawn and be staged for the picture. And this was before digital photography was available, so we took several shots saying different things like cheese and kimchi and peace. There were several photographers too, not necessarily to compete with each other, but we just wanted to ensure that we had a keeper. I've asked that we take photos today, in part because of my past, this tradition that I grew up with. It's not a measure of whether or not, who belongs to our church or not. It's just a celebration. And I hope that you would do us the honor of the favor to stay for the group photo on Zoom, that you would allow your cameras to be on so that we can share this moment and celebrate together. And of course, you could not have Easter without a big Easter egg hunt. After service was over, the children would gather at the corner of the grass lawn and kids would be released, youngest to oldest, to go hunting for eggs. Teachers would replenish the yard after each grade or so. We would go and hunt. I would ask the taller, older kids to help me take some from the top, and they did. And I learned to do the same later when I got older and I was taller. I'd grab the eggs from the upper branches and give them to the kids. But then, as we all do, you grow up and you grow past the Sunday school Easter. And when you do that, what is this day really about? Easter began to feel like every other service. It was an important day to celebrate, but nothing really felt special about it anymore. As a pastor, I think I share in that kind of experience. I found that Easter messages were a bit more challenging than I was led to believe as a young seminarian. It's one thing to consider Jesus' death on the cross. There was never a shortage of my need for mercy. So Good Friday has always spiritually resonated with me. I mean, this past Friday service was particularly beautiful. Nicodemus' song, Were You There When They Crucified My Lord, which was played by our own Shelby Hobart in particular, was moving for me. Most Good Friday services, no matter the style or framework or what the order of worship is, all I need to do is look upon that cross and I can easily feel the pain of the nails and the suffocating weight of my sin. I am much more easily moved by the Spirit than any other day of the year to confess my sins before God. In contrast, Easter feels different. The resurrection is not something any of us have experienced for ourselves. We were not witnesses to Jesus, nor have witnessed any other who have come back from the dead after him. So naturally, there is this kind of disconnect to the Easter story. We no less celebrate it, but it's almost as if we have nothing to offer, nothing to add to this story. Or do we? Sometimes the best way to share a story is to live in it through someone else. Today, in our reading from Acts, we find Peter preaching. He was actually giving his testimony after everything that happened back in chapter 10. A vision from the rooftop that seemed to be about dietary laws was actually about who was worthy of the gospel. He says, I truly understand that God shows no partiality. Peter was convicted of this and that he was commissioned to preach to the people, commissioned by none other than by the life and death and resurrection of his Lord, the living Christ, the Son of God, Jesus of Nazareth. Now, you have to consider the truly amazing transformation Peter went. I mean, Peter was, what can I say? He was definitely the action speaks louder than words kind of guy. Remember, just a few nights ago, he took a knife to a soldier's ear on the night that Jesus was arrested. Or remember him jumping off the boat to walk on water because he saw Jesus calling out to him. If you've been following the Chosen series over this Lenten season, you would have found that even Jesus jokes about Peter being his bodyguard. And this was only remarking about Peter's actions. When he spoke, well, he was often off the mark also. Remember how he once rebuked Jesus only to be rebuked in return? Or how he promised Jesus to die with him only to curse him and to deny Christ 3 times before the rooster. That was the kind of person Peter was. But he was no longer that man. Doubt and fear no longer determine his words or even his beings. He was giving a witness to the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And at the same time, in his witness, we got to see how this life was also a witness of the resurrection itself. The resurrection was at work in Peter's own life. His openness to bringing the gospel first to Cornelius and later to other Gentiles testifies to this very fact. Easter is a day to celebrate Jesus' resurrection, and it is a day to remember our own witness. If you go back 140 years when Grover Cleveland was the 22nd president of these United States, not many could claim Tempe as a home. Indeed, Tempe wasn't even a city yet. Even fewer were familiar with this church, let alone a church that they could claim as their spiritual home. But in 1887, the Spirit of the Lord moved among the people here, and they came together to form the first Methodist church. And since then, we have not stopped loving God and sharing the love of God with our neighbors. We planted seeds of justice long ago, seeking to be a church unified, both the North Episcopal and the South Episcopal Church, the Methodist churches, joining to be one before the denomination eventually merged. We planted seeds of mission, sending mission funds to India before a time when we would be now where we receive Indian international students and others in our ministries. We planted seeds of evangelism, supporting the expansion of sister congregations like Dayspring, Grace, and Red Mountain United Methodist Churches. And on this day, our witness continues to the local community here on University and Forest and beyond. What has been clear for these past 135 years is that our witness is both who we are as a congregation as well as who we are as individuals. Certainly, we can talk about our witness, about what the church has done. We can talk about our urban ministry, urban outreach ministry. We can talk about the Fort Apache mission. We can talk about our Habitat for Humanity projects. But really, it's about the people who have served in these areas. The witness is actually from you. As the Reverend Derek Reverend Dr. Derek Weber from the Discipleship Ministry says, "Our witnesses around the kitchen table swelling with food, on worn porches, during easy road trips, and in the hum of barbershops or hair salons." See, your life matters. Your story matters. And so testify. Tell your story, or someone else will. It is, however, something that more and more people find difficult saying. I frequently hear comments saying, "I don't know what to say if I were to give a witness. The audience isn't right," or one figures that their gift is not with words. I want to softly and gently remind you that was also Moses' case, but God used him to speak anyway. I resonate with this, and I remember one Easter Sunday afternoon when I was, I think, in high school. Every member of the church was sent out 2 by 2 to go into the community and share the gospel of Jesus Christ cold with strangers, or at least to pass out a pamphlet and invite them to our church. Doing that had my heart racing the entire time. Every person that was approaching, my heart would pound. What am I going to say? What am I going to say? But with me, things got easier, and I grew in confidence as I began to actually serve with children and youth until one day I realized that, speaking to adults isn't really anything different. With this, I want to share with you my Easter witness, but addressed to my daughter, so that it might be something for you to, one, be meaningful for you, and also for you to be able to be stirred for your own witness. So, dear Amber, let me tell you about my Easter. My Easter story does not have any bunnies or eggs filled with candy. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I promise you the story will not be disappointing. Easter is a day of celebration, but before I tell you about the amazing celebration, I first have to tell you about a very sad time for me. Many years ago, I was alone, all alone. I lived by myself in a very large city with no family around. What was worse than being alone was that I felt unwanted, even hated. People I had never met once threw their soda into my car on the street and said mean things to me just because I was Asian. Their hatred made me sad. Some people call me fat and lazy and that I had short arms. Their words hurt me. And someone who I really liked told me she did not like me in the same way. I felt alone and unwanted. But I learned about Jesus, and it changed my life. Jesus had experienced hatred and loneliness too. During his final moments, Jesus felt unwanted and hated. His friends left him to be by himself. People said mean things to him. They did mean things to him. They hurt him also. It was terrible. But the amazing thing was that on Easter, God did not allow hate to win. God did not let the bad things that happened to Jesus be forever. No, on Easter, the most wonderful and amazing thing happened. Just when I thought that Jesus was beaten down and sadness was going to last forever, Jesus rose and was victorious. God had raised him. He won. He came back to life, and he won over hatred and shame. He was no longer sad, but happy. He was no longer alone because God was with him. God was in him. And today, Jesus is still alive in heaven and in me and in you. And because Jesus is alive in me, I am no longer alone. My Easter story is that Jesus told me that God loved me. And I was really glad to know it. Just when I thought I did not matter or that my love had no meaning, God showed me how much God loved me. I get to say that I love God back, and I love Jesus still. We are the bestest friends. And I hope you will get to know and experience God's love in the ways that I have. Love is real, and God is love. And just in case that you think that this can't be, remember that this day in particular, this Easter, your mother and I are celebrating 12 years of our marriage that proves God's love is real and strong. We love you and God loves you. Happy Easter. And happy Easter to all of us. May your witness to God's amazing love be shared and known for God's glory. May it be so.